So many people don't know this. In 2019, we had come this close to actually considering shutting down 450 as a product line and just becoming a technology provider.
Hello and welcome to Declassifying, Ather's community podcast where we talk about the things happening behind the scenes and what's cooking at Ather. This is Abhishek, and in this episode, we catch up with Rohit and Tarun on how 2021 went for Ather.
Tarun has obviously put out this blog post every year talking about what we set out to do in the previous year, what we achieved. Usually it comes with a lot of GIFs. And this year as well, when we saw the article, it turned out to be really long, so we decided to do a podcast anyway.
We stopped at 6 pages and 1 month in the process.
Research.
Yeah, in the research and writing process.
And a couple of people who, when I asked them for some data, they were like, why the hell are you asking me this data? Are you applying for an IJP or something like this? So, Abhishek, why don't you go start first?
Yeah, so starting off, last year we put out, saying that we wanted to increase the prices of the product. We set out to build the Hosur factory and a whole bunch of things. What did we set out to do this year? Or 2021?
Yes, last year.
Yeah, last year.
So 2020 was a year of build-up. Yeah. 450X from a product development perspective was being readied. New manufacturing line was being readied. We were getting ready to come out of COVID, right? Like all the good stuff. 2021, all this stuff was supposed to deliver. Right? So 2021, for those of you who may go back and check the last blog post, I'm sure Balaji will link it somewhere. We talked about how this year is the year we really build a sales engine. It has never really been a business for that, like for practical purposes. We've been a extremely large, giant R&D organization. We've sold whenever we felt like it, a little bit, but we were really never compelled to sell. And 2021 was going to be a year when we actually try and sell, hopefully as much as possible. Right? So building a sales engine to deliver on that was one of the big targets for 2021. The other big, really enormous target was to build a business. So 450 was a good product. I would say it was possibly one of the best products that had ever come out in the scooter space. Definitely the best electric scooter. But it was just that. It was an amazing prototype. It was an amazing concept. It had great product market fit. But the business behind 450 was a disaster. It was like just shot to hell. And that's the piece that we were worried about for a long time. Though we launched 450X in 2018, 450 in 2018, and just from a quality perspective, we knew we needed a couple of years to stabilize things. Automotive platforms don't come out fully formed in 6 months. Supply chains don't come out fully formed in 6 months. They take time, they take patience, they take a lot of grit. But the concern for us was that what if the entire 450 business model never worked? What if you can never build this product and sell it for a reasonable margin? In that case, see, the point of Ather in some sense has been, we've been the flag bearers of proving that you could build great products and you could make electric viable with great products. Right? 450 did that. It was 20 times more powerful. The specs of the product were like 10, 20, 30 times more powerful or just brand new compared to the market. So it kind of dragged the entire market to realize that, okay, electric is viable. Good electric two-wheelers are really possible. But the problem that we had was that if the economics behind all of it does not work out, then it becomes a counterexample. Right? We're all engineers trying to prove that good product and good engineering could create incredible value. But if at the end of 7 years and $100 million, all we did was build a good prototype, which could never really scale because the business was just not viable, then we would actually prove the complete opposite of what you're trying to do, right? Yeah. That engineers should not be given companies to build, right? Like what everybody else did. Like the idea that's like some of the folks in the market that today seem to have that you can just go acquire technology is commoditized. Product development is commoditized. It's manufacturing capacity that counts, right? It's scale that it's just capital that counts. That argument would win. So many people don't know this, and in 2019 we had come this close to actually considering shutting down 450 as a product line and just becoming a technology provider. And the thing that convinced us to back out of that kind of a thought process was that, wow, this will just prove the complete opposite of what we set out to do. Right? It will prove that engineers don't make good business people. They can't run businesses, especially in this sector. Right? Maybe in software it somehow worked out, but then what wouldn't happen. Automotive is like this old boys club, right? So I think that was one of the biggest driving reasons for us in 2021. I remember 2020 Ather struggled with a fair bit of attrition, and there was this one really old team member who'd kind of given up because things were really tight and was planning to leave. And I remember, and that was a point when the penny dropped for me. Pitching him to stay, I told him that, listen, you stayed back all these years to build this incredibly great product. You stayed back all these years to build this amazing, great product development engine. It will all be for nothing if you don't build a great business out of it. So you want to stay back and help us build a business out of this for the next 2-3 years, right? If you don't do that, then we've practically achieved nothing. Okay. So I think that was, in some sense, the biggest OKR for us in 2021. Build a business out of this. Prove that you could make this viable.
Order of the impact in terms of years, right? If you look back the 7-8 years, right, we have been this essentially this, like you said, R&D focused and at what point did it actually happen for us to start talking about us wanting a sales engine? You said it has to make business sense, right? But how did we go about making that business sense work for us on the distribution side, on the retail partner side? How did we go about that journey?
So we've looked at 3 different muscles that you need as an organization. One is R&D and product development, right? Which I would say Ather is probably quite strong on.
Sure.
Definitely in the Indian context, one of the strongest organizations out there in automotive. The second muscle is operations, which is manufacturing and supply chain. It's a muscle that we began working on in 2016, 2017, I would say. We've struggled a lot. It's still not one of our strongest muscles, but something we continue working on and we continue investing on. And the last one was a sales muscle. Right? Now, we kind of knew that, okay, there is more demand than we can sell for. But again, if you think long-term as an organization, you cannot have a long-term enduring organization that does not know how to sell well, right? You can create hype, right? You can have a limited edition. You can have exclusives. You can have pre-orders. We've done almost all of this, yeah. And it's great. It can last you for 6 months. It can last you for 2 years, right? If you're really lucky, it can last you for 5 years. But dhanda, right? Basics of dhanda. If the company does not know how to sell consistently, like freaking operations, it should be a freaking science, right? Marketing could be a science. Building a brand, it should not be an art. Okay, shouldn't be. I mixed up. It shouldn't be an art. Sales should not feel like an art. Because if so, you violate the third OKR that we've set out for ourselves. Build an enduring engine.
Sure.
And the only way something really becomes an engine, you can't have an engine that's like, I don't know, man. Like, let's throw something in. Maybe it'll create steam, and maybe the engine will run. Right? Sometimes you throw coal, sometimes you throw newspapers, and the bloody thing does not create enough steam. Right?
Sure.
You can't have that kind of situation. You need to know exactly, this is the kind of lignite that we need, this is the kind of coal, this is the kind of properties we need, this is the amount of volume it takes, this is the amount of weight it takes, this is the economics of running it, this is the number of people who will be shoveling coal in that engine all the time, and shoveling at this pace will create this kind of pace for the vehicle. If you want the vehicle to pull off double the load, then this is the amount of coal that will go. You need to know this, right? Otherwise, it's like an Italian car. Looks great, right? But you just don't goddamn know how long will this bloody thing run,
sure,
right? So you want to build an organization like that, which means, and sorry, I took a long time to talk about it, because even we had this question at the start. Listen, this is an amazing brand. People want to buy the 450. There is a waiting period. We are a premium company today. Just open up more cities and people just keep buying all over, right? But you're convinced by the end of thinking that unless it's institutionalized, unless like the organization knows as a science how to sell. Like tomorrow, if we say that, okay, this is great, we're selling 1 lakh units a month, now we want to go from 1 lakh to 10 lakhs. There has to be, just like operations.
Yeah.
You don't wing your way in manufacturing, right? You don't wing your way and say, oh, we want to produce like 10x more vehicles in the next 12 months. Let's give it a best shot. Let's try something, right? No, you put up an extremely concrete plan on, right? You know down to the last day, down to the last hour, the material flow that will happen, right?
Sure.
In a good engine.
Yes.
Funny we're not there. Head this out for the community. Yeah? Funny we're not there yet on operations, but we're getting there. Similarly on sales, you wanted to have that kind of a strong operational capability. So that's what building the operation sales engine, that's where the philosophy came from. That it's okay. I think for the most part, the building a sales engine will actually be a little bit of theoretical work because you just have more demand. But I still want to be able to very accurately know how much can we sell, what's our cost of selling this, right? What's the cost of creating content? How do I basically, if I want to scale this up in different states, different cities, over 30 different product lines, the engine needs to be able to deliver extremely predictably. That's why building the sales engine became a big thing for us. That's why we actually ended up moving people from operations towards sales because the thought process is want to bring here.
Sure.
And some of the new hires who joined the team.
I don't think traditional auto companies have had decades to build out such a sales engine, right? Which is why they're probably super efficient at optimizing delivery timelines, rolling out new models instantly. And we haven't seen a lot of auto companies come up in the last decade or two. Right? So how did that journey happen? Like we've added a whole bunch of retail locations, and I'm sure like you said earlier, we've been holding back on selling too much, right? So how we could have done a lot more in terms of opening experience centers, service centers, and retail locations, but we held back. So what was the logic behind that? Why did we?
Logic behind not opening more, or
yeah.
So after a certain while, we've struggled with supply constraints throughout the year, right? After the first quarter, like probably, I'm talking calendar. I think beyond JFM, Jan, March, I don't think there's been a single quarter when we've not had supply constraints. Jan, March was I think the only quarter where we actually built up some inventory and we sat on it. And we're like, okay, now we can really open up more stores, no constraint. But then the COVID second wave came, right? COVID second wave ended, and then there's been just this massive growth spurt. We went from selling, I think, like 800-900 units, 1,000 units a month to almost like 3,600 units a month, like in 4 or 5 months. And consistently, supply chain's been constrained somewhere or other. It's kept growing, but honestly, not at the pace that we wanted. So what happened after a while is we kept pushing. We hit 3,600 in October. Actually, production that month was substantially lower. We somehow squeezed out the entire inventory in every part of the funnel, like just sort of somehow sell. I know Hubli and many others, I think the Bangalore stores also sold out the display vehicles.
Yeah.
There's nothing left. So what happened by the end of October was we are running pretty dry. We are hoping for a big, a reasonable production in November to sort of make up. And then one of our largest electronics vendors decommitted. Purchase orders were raised, everything was there in the system. But given the supply chain crunch globally, they had to go back and decline the order that was already raised in the system. They said that they will ship sometime in February. So November to February, so massive crunch, right? And it's a tragic thing out there because all these components, if you want to buy out in the open market, you'll find them not at 2, 3, 4x price. You'll often find them at about 50 to 100x price hikes. Right? So like a $2 component available at $200. Get 5 components like that and boom, you forget margins. You'll be staring at a massive negative cost structure. So November, lines went down for a few weeks. I think we ran production for maybe 10 days, 15 days, not even 15 days, I think. Then December, same shit. Like we have not been able to resolve it. There's still no supply, a very limited supply. And given, we also had some cell constraints, not enough battery cells. So finally we took the plunge and said that, okay, we will buy raw material of that extortion market and somehow just run production a little bit. But still, I think we barely did like 2,000 vehicles in December, not even that, I don't know. January is where we finally started writing the big checks to somehow just keep running production. And I think February now, I'm starting to see some signs of things finally opening. In the middle, the wave 3 threat came in and some of our shipments again got delayed, customs delay, flights not being available. So all in all, so October we started seeing a squeeze. I think a massive squeeze. Demand was roughly about 2x or like 80%, 70% higher than what we could supply that month. So we were a little concerned that we are opening new dealerships, but can these guys, like, it's not a happy situation to be in that place for a very long time. November, the same should happen, but even worse, because I think we are supplying at like 33% of the actual demand. December is when we kind of took the call that, listen, it's been 2-3 months now. Things haven't improved. They only look bad for the next month or two. So December, we started delaying our experience center openings. We started, like all the conversations in the pipeline, we should have opened 50 experience centers by March. But we started deferring everything off because it wasn't making sense. There's not enough supply. January also things so bad. That's why we only opened up a handful of cities. Now that the scene looks a little better, there's again optimism. We start opening centers again. All this while, we didn't change the goalpost of making sales a cleaner operational engine. So tracking of metrics, understanding of what input allows you, what kind of an output, like what leads to a proper sale, focusing on quality metrics, solving them by better training, not just throwing more people at it. All this continued, but the ground reality of volume being limited was there. So we had to hold back our store opening for a few months. It's only started going up now.
So this, so it's not just the chip shortage. There are shortage of other.
I would say two big buckets: chip shortage, semiconductor shortage, and first semiconductor shortage, and second is lithium-ion cell shortage. We really need lithium-ion cell production in India. The fact that we don't have it in the midst of the biggest EV boom ever, probably anywhere, is a shame. We need local production. We need enormous capacity creation. To give you some sense, total lithium-ion cells that probably are available in the markets right now can produce maybe about 1.5 to 2 lakh vehicles in FY23. Right? Actual demand is about 4-5 times higher. Right? So there is a significant constraint.
Last October, you sort of put out this achievement by Ather of hitting 100 million annual ARR.
Right.
So for all the people who are not into the whole startup funding ecosystem, what does it mean and why is this a significant achievement?
Actually, it doesn't mean much. 100 is not a distinctly different number from 90 or 110 or 80. Right? It's just a number. But it's the first time we crossed into 3 digits. It sounds sexy. It's the kind of valuation, it's the kind of revenue that should earn you a spectacular valuation. So I got pretty excited, and I was tweeted about it. The other thing about this is, I think we were the second company to cross the 100 million annual run rate mark in the EV space. And the pace at which we were shooting up, if you then have supply chain constraints of this magnitude, we would have become the largest. I think we would have become the largest EV company ever. I think one of the competitors crossed a similar number a few months back, but was smaller than us in that month. Mm-hmm. So October we also became the largest by revenue. I think Ather was roughly about 1/3 of the industry's revenue, despite being only about 15% of the total sales, or even lower probably. So I think just some nice thing to celebrate, hitting 3-digit ARR. In startup worlds, yes, you'll typically see VCs like completely crazy, tweeting about when their portfolio company said this. Our VCs are much more quieter, so I just figured I'll do that job. For them. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, a lot of IPO questions over there, but we'll save that for another episode.
Yeah.
So along with this, I think we also talked about how sometime last year the 450 as a product line was had started getting positive gross margins, right?
Yeah.
So what is the significance of that, and what is Mount gross margin?
So, you want to make the business sustainable. A very simple 101 of business. For every product that you sell, if you spend 100 rupees in buying the material for that product, okay, let's say your costs are basically the material that goes in the vehicle, your cost of assembling the vehicle, and your cost of delivering the vehicle to the customer, right? 3 simple costs. And the money that you bring in is what the customer pays you, right? I'm sure this is not rocket science, but basically the money that the customer pays you should be higher than the money that it costs you to build the vehicle and sell the vehicle, right? But in a new product development and in a hardware company, it takes a long while before this math works out. In the early stages, your technology is so new that everything that you're buying from your vendors is super expensive. And though you know the long-term cost will be 20, 30, maybe 80% lower, you won't get that cost on day one because it just is a very new technology and things are super not clear, right? Lots of complications. Your cost of assembling the vehicle is also very high because your processes are not super ironed out. So you're taking extra long to be really sure of everything. You're bumbling around in the factory. You're confused all the time. You're shipping out stuff in the wrong trucks. They're not optimized. So on and forth. Right? If all you're doing is importing a scooter from China and you're putting a sticker on it that says Mehta electric scooters and you want to sell that vehicle, then honestly it's not a big that's not a big deal. You bought the vehicle for 100 rupees, sell the vehicle for 110, so I've done, right? It's not that complicated. But when you build your own thing, and Ather is one of those very few companies that has built its own platforms. Literally nobody else in the startup world has actually built their own platform, right? Like nobody's actually invested in getting their own tech up from the grounds up, right? There are a few legacy OEMs like TVS and Bajaj that are doing it, but nobody in the startup world. And even TVS and Bajaj's of the world are honestly at very early stages of doing this entire thing. So making this math work, customer pays you more than what it costs you to build the vehicle, is an incredibly hard journey. How hard? 2018 or 2019 start, when we were selling the first Ather 450s. I think I can not be public about it, it's fine. It used to cost us about 3.6 lakh rupees as the material cost per vehicle, and an additional about almost 1,20,000 on top of other expenses of assembling and taking other risks on the product. So roughly something like 5 lakh rupees was your cost to build and sell one vehicle, while one sale brought in 1,20,000. Right? Yes, the math was not working out. Right? And I remember, and I was particularly emotional about this milestone because, and I've said this, but I'll just repeat it because a lot of folks that joined new or the company does not know this. When this math happened in 2019, nobody, I would like to say that no, we really had the vision, we knew things would work out. We were all shitting ourselves, okay? Nobody had the balls to say this will work out, right? Because we all predicted that this would be far lower than where it landed up. Now, while if you really objectively think about it, there were very good reasons why the costs came so high. And hence, there are solutions to all of those problem statements. But when the math hits you, it's like 5 lakh, 6 lakh rupees to assemble a vehicle. I think all of us panic. And I even remember committing to one of our shareholders that pakka promise, if you don't fix this in 1 year, I will get the McKinseys of the world to come and run this. Okay, I will not do this on my own. Right? And even as I made this commitment of 1 year, internally we were pretty shit scared. So we actually got some of the best consulting companies out there. McKinsey of the world, we see all really good legitimate companies. And honestly, all of them walked in, they're like, what? You guys are taking, like, what? Like, that's your cost structure? So like, listen guys, we'll do our best, but we've never seen an automotive platform's cost drop more than 30%, right? So if you're starting here, you'll drop it by 30%. And I think a 30% cost is still 3x higher, right? Like if I drop from 5.5 lakhs by 30%, it'll land at maybe 4 lakhs, like 3 lakhs if I'm lucky. It's not going to make sense. I'm sure they could have also supported solving, but eventually we bit the bullet and said, no, you know what, we're going to believe in ourselves, right? We're going to have some amazing music play in the background, and we're really going to do this over the next year, right? We committed to it, and despite the pandemic, wave 1, wave 2, everything, by early 21, we got to a place where it cost us less to finally produce this vehicle and sell it than the customer paid us, right? So that was an amazing milestone, and that's Mount Gross Margin. So what we did is we literally just plotted this gross margin graph, right? And it's so beautiful, right? Goes from like shit numbers to like really positive 3, 4, 5%. And Rohit looked at the graph and he kind of felt, this looks like a peak that you're climbing, right? And that's where we started calling that gross margin graph as Mount Gross Margin, and we actually made a medal out of that, and we distributed it to the entire organization. Lots of people even said that this is the only medal they've ever received.
Yeah. Ather is looking at recognition finally.
and it turned out like this is the most valuable medal that anybody's ever hit, because this was, in my opinion, the definitive moment where finally it made the business work. Right? Obviously, you need a lot more scale. Like having that gross margin on one vehicle is not enough to sustain the entire company. You need the scale of thousands of vehicles per month, and that's the second part of this journey. But the first part, without this math working out, without you making more than it costs you to produce it, you can sell tens of thousands of vehicles. You can sell 1 million vehicles. Like 1 million vehicles into negative is still negative. Right? It's not going to work out. So crossing this barrier was like an amazing feat, and this is why we celebrated it so much.
Yeah,
I would say if you're actually supporting the hardware space in India, every single hardware entrepreneur, every single hardware company is going through a very similar journey. If they want to do product development, and which is why doing product development from grounds up in India is so goddamn hard, which is why most companies don't even attempt it, right? Because they know that this shit is scary. Because they know that it takes incredible balls to try and attempt going through it. I think we have not celebrated this enough, because what Ather's pulled off here is, in my opinion, is genuinely historical. It's obviously historical for us because it saves us as a company and makes this entire goddamn thing viable, right? But I would say this is actually historical for the industry, because nobody else, even now, look at what Ola's doing, right? They had to import an entire product from outside, right? Because it's a hard journey to build everything from scratch in here, right? Look at every other electric vehicle company that existed in the country before that. They all just got their containers from China, right? They never even attempted, despite some of them having existed in the ecosystem for years or decades now, right? Because it's so hard. And I don't blame them. I'm not saying, wow, you chickened out, you guys didn't try. It has actually gotten very hard. And before Ather, nobody actually even succeeded at it once. Right? Not a single two-wheeler company built their platforms in India. Everybody had a joint venture, right? And it made sense. In the 70s, in the 80s, the 90s, I think we were not there as a country. We couldn't build this, right? But the fact that first-time entrepreneurs can now start a company in India and actually do this here and actually make this entire thing work, I think it is amazing. And I really hope lots of folks who went out from Ather and later on have started up in the last couple of years, I see the same confidence in them because they saw this thing happen at Ather, right? That you could do this and you could actually make it work. That confidence didn't exist before. We didn't know what we were getting into. But if we knew, honestly, I would have been shit scared then. I don't think this is viable, right? If we were industry veterans, we would have never attempted it. But the fact that we attempted it, and despite initial massive failures, stayed on at it, right? And it made it work, I think is actually very little credit to me or to others or to founders. I'm saying the fact that the ecosystem made it happen is just amazing.
Yeah, so coming to the ecosystem as well, I think last year we saw a lot of support from the government side as well in terms of the FAME incentive being revised, right? So, and that I think came in sometime in the middle of the year. So, did that impact our strategy or goals in any way?
Yeah, obviously. I think nobody expected subsidy support to be of that quantum. It did change. Actually, the biggest impact it had was we all knew that yes, at some point we want to build and sell this product at let's say 1.3 lakhs. But to do that on day one was not viable. Like you would burn through $1 billion over the next 2-3 years if you attempted doing it. So, and hence you price the product higher. 450 plus was a 1,45,000 rupee product, right? Eventually, we wanted to bring the price down to 1.2 lakh rupees as we got more time, right? What FAME2's done, it's pulled that timeline back. 450 plus was supposed to be a 1.2 lakh product maybe in 2025. It became a 1.2 lakh product in 2021, right? So there's a massive acceleration of the electrification timeline. What's it also done is lots of customers. So there's a pyramid of customers, right? The most early adopters buy it first, and then the next, and then the next, and then the mass market markets. The innovators, whatever it's called, right? What certainly happened is products have become economically viable to customers way later in that curve, which is why while the curve is still while purchase is still going through that curve, which means early adopters are still buying it first, then your influencers still buying it first, then early adopters, then early majority, then all of that curve would have taken maybe 6-7 years to materialize. It's now happening in 18 months. So this crunching is very powerful because this certainly means the market size, in my opinion, has expanded by about 5 to 6 times in the last 6-9 months. We're going to see an opportunity to sell 1 million vehicles per annum, 1 million electric scooters per annum as early as next year, 2023. Right? This was supposed to happen by 26, 27. Right? So FAME2's changed the timeline for the industry dramatically. It's made EV viable for a lot more customers much faster. So it's changed everybody's plans. Like we originally thought that we'll only raise so much capital, make the company profitable, and that's it. With that profits, we'll keep churning just new product development. And honestly, we had to go destroy that plan because if the industry is going to be growing so rapidly, you can't say that now I'm going to become profitable first and then grow after. You have to grow with the rest of the industry, which means your pace of investment goes up. Which is why Ather is investing way faster than we originally planned. Everybody's investing way faster than originally planned.
Yeah. How's your review going on so far, Tarun? Happy with what you're talking about?
Full marks. 100%.
Full marks, 100 on 100?
I'll definitely hire myself again.
Yeah, okay. Awesome. Good. That inspires a lot of confidence. But let's get to some numbers then, Tarun. Let's talk about things that we have to track really closely, right? With our scale, you're talking about gross margin, you're talking about unit economics and all those things. Right? What about things like vendor quality, warranty spends, SPRs, that is as in SPRs and straight pass ratios, even the charging infrastructure, how long has it been, the uptimes of the charging infrastructure, or even how many of these chargers are being used, right? Can you talk about these numbers?
We made progress in 2021 on most operations metrics, but I wouldn't say we are where we ideally should be for this volume and this pace of growth. Things that we made progress on, yes, straight pass ratios, which means more vehicles come out fully perfect off the line first time instead of needing more work. I think the numbers like probably 85-90% now. So maybe 1 in 10 vehicles need some rework, which is good, which is great. This number used to be like 20-30% once upon a time. Vendor quality has overall gone up. Yeah. So there was a time when if you place an order for about 1,000 components in a month, you would land up at maybe 150, 200. And everything else would get rejected at different stages. The number's gone up dramatically, but at this volume, I would want, like, if you place an order of 1,000, roughly 1,000 come back. Sure. Yeah. We place an order of 1,000, and I think yesterday a place where about maybe 600-700 come back. Right? We still have huge issues. So this leads to a very complex ordering complexity, where you're always trying to predict that should I actually order for 1400, 1500, and then I'll probably get 1000 right. But what if you actually get, but if you do place an order for 1500 with all vendors, the problem is 90% of your vendors will deliver on time now. They will deliver 1500, right? But some 10% will get stuck with 1000. So yes, you're correct. You did get only 1000 eventually, but you are now stuck with an inventory of about 500 for the remaining 90% of the vendors. And now that you place an order once for 1500 in that month, you can't place next month. Okay, I have some carrying some inventory from last month. So this month I'll order like only 800 pieces.
Sure.
You set expectations. Another expectations. You also set up their operations. So those guys are like, like 1500 a month. That means I don't need to roll out almost 50 vehicles, 50 components a day. So now they set up a line in a particular way. If next month suddenly becomes 800, they're like, what do I do with the extra staff that I've hired and trained for you guys? Right? You do this a few times, they lose respect and trust on you. So now you need to really, really balance this out. If you place 1500 card number, thinking that you only get 1000, you better be willing to place 1500 next month. And ideally not just 1500, actually keep growing on it next month. Because you told vendors we are growing 20%. If they don't see it in their demand, they're like, you're lying. I'm growing actually 20% per month. Right? And understandably, vendors don't have the full visibility. You can tell them, Texas Instruments decommitted. What can I do? Like, I don't know what Texas Instruments. You're lying. That's what they'll think, understandably. So it's complex. I will be honest, I don't think we have really cracked this problem. We are now putting more and more attention. So, for example, we are improving the bandwidth on our supply chain teams, on our sourcing teams particularly. That team's getting a lot more new people now. So that the bandwidth of current people frees up and they have more time to work with vendors to make sure that they don't screw up quality. We are adding more people in our planning team. Right? Like Anurag just recently joined to material planning better. We're also trying to bring in more vendors onto the table and generally phase out vendors that have not done a good job. We did, I think, a pretty good job on phasing out the really terrible vendors in 2021, but there's still a cycle or two required before we really have the best quality with us. So overall, I would say after the fact that some materials are just not available, and number two problem is supply chain is not very predictable. This 1,500, 1,000 problem.
Sure.
Right? And this is an Ather problem. This is not an industry problem. Because I would understand that, our touchscreen dashboards that are just cutting edge, brand new technology, they don't come out on time. God damn it, our bloody castings don't come out on time. The industry's been spamming out casting since like the British era, man. Like Mughals banate honge. Or fast forward 500 years, we are still freaking struggling with castings. Casting show, like one freaking rod in, I think, a swing arm. Like that thing, basically didn't screw up production forever. Like our fasteners don't come on time. Everybody, we're struggling on many fronts.
Sure.
We need to give our sourcing teams more bandwidth. They're really stretched for time. We need to give our manufacturing engineering teams more time and bandwidth. That team needs to roughly about triple up from current numbers. Our sourcing team needs to roughly double up from current numbers. So I think we now have a good idea, a way better idea than we ever had before. There's almost science in this planning now, right? Even manpower planning, like how many people you actually need here, what kind of people can solve what kind of problems. If you add 5 more vendors, how much headcount needs to go up in manufacturing engineering, how much headcount needs to go up in quality, how much headcount needs to go up in sourcing. We are starting to have good heuristics here. But we are at a very early stage.
Sure.
Right? So we're still struggling. I don't think the struggle will end in another 4-5 months. I think the struggle will remain with us. But hopefully before this year ends, this is maybe like your order 1,900 comes in. So your order 1,600, 700 comes in. That's really bad. Sorry, let me just get the numbers right. We're going to roughly hire about 1,000 new people full time and about another 700 on contract. Yeah. And to give you a sense, today we have about 700 full time and about 500 on contract. Wow. So we're going to be roughly about 3,000 people organization, 2,500 to 3,000 people total organization by the end of FY23. We're roughly about 1,200 right now. Okay, so there's an incredible hiring that's ahead of us. We're ramping up the team that's going to hire. So that needs to hire up first. But then all of us need to do our bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anything else, Balaji? Have we left out anything? Is this review good enough?
One last thing for
Sure.
the community. So we talked a lot about building a company, building a successful business, selling 1 million vehicles, whatever, right? But ultimately, none of that, I think, is important if there's no focus on customer experience, on quality, right? So, like over the last year, I think we focused a lot on sales, but at the same time, keeping that customer experience and quality and having as few bugs as possible is also is a balancing act. So, how did that go about last year?
So we have a bias for building at Ather. And there are two ways every company in its journey of growth will obviously run into a situation where somebody will tag the CEO and say, company chore hai. Right? It's inevitable. It's just human nature, right? Because they had a terrible experience. And then two ways you can respond to it. One, you say, throw whatever it takes at this problem to just fix it, right? Throw more people in customer support, throw more money, just change the entire component. I hear all these glorified stories of how this company changed my entire vehicle because some screw fell off. You may have to do it sometimes. We've done it in the past. And I think that's a very limited part of how you fundamentally fix it. Bias for building is not that. That's a bias for firefighting. Mm-hmm. And a lot of companies and a lot of organizations, a lot of folks will really be amazing in that phase where they will just firefight it. We do firefighting. We do that, yes, which is why things haven't blown up completely. But the bias of building comes in going back and asking more fundamental questions. How do we fundamentally avoid this situation? And one of the big frustrations for last year has been that if somebody pre-orders a vehicle and decides to cancel it next, honestly, our experience is probably as worse as the New York Times, or probably worse, right? Because I think even if they send a mail, we often confused about what to do with this mail sometimes. You want to fix that. Now, obviously, there's an easy way to fix it. And I have proposed it to teams sometimes. Just like whoever writes it, we'll just ship the money first. We'll figure out, we'll do reconciliation later. But that's a bad way to fix this. There are systems. There is an ERP that you have. The ERP is supposed to be pretty fast. You have your CRM systems. You've got them, build them in-house. They're pretty fast. Your dealers are operating on systems that are actually built by you. They are pretty fast. But they don't speak to each other. And if they don't, it's fine to do, like, handle pre-orders the way you're doing right now. But at scales of 1 million, the entire ship falls apart. So even as you try and temporarily just sort of, plaster these problems, which we are doing right now, the bias of building comes in and says, go back and fundamentally rethink this entire experience and build a better one. Right? That's what we've been trying to do. Yes, we have our CX teams, customer experience teams, literally listening to every problem that pops up on the forum or pops up on Twitter handles, social media handles, and they're also attacking them. But there are even larger efforts going in. Like, we're rebuilding our complete product management teams on this front. We're expanding them almost 2x. We're hiring almost, 30 new developers on this front to rethink the entire experience, to make sure that customer experience is delivered better as a process. Like, you shouldn't need to, somebody shouldn't feel like, their ass is on fire to keep CX good. CX should be naturally good because the organization's intent is that. The organization's intent is not to screw your customers. But if you don't have good systems that can just consistently keep delivering it, then what you will have is fantastic CX as long as the money flows freely. And then one fine day, and every company bloody goes through it, right? One fine day when you say, okay, now we've grown a lot, now here is the time to show profitability. Boom. First thing that takes a hit, CX will take a hit. Customer support, everything related to customer. All quality metrics will fall through a glove. You want to institutionalize how you deliver quality, not just in manufacturing, but also in your customer experience. That's what we've been trying to do. It's a hard journey, which is why I'm a big fan of this belief. There usually are no freaking silver bullets. I think this is, I read this in The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Mm-hmm. Right? He says, all you got are bloody boring lead bullets. They will not kill that mythical beast, right? But you keep firing enough of them, you will earn the right to finally win. Or you can keep hoping that I'll have this one silver bullet, I'll do this one thing, and then everything will be magically right. but you want to build something amazing long term, there are no easy answers. I think we made progress. I think we made actually lots of progress. We've gone through journeys where our customer experience was just horrible. We couldn't manage half of the calls coming in, every city. From that, I think we made enormous progress. We can handle 85-90% of our calls now. At one point, it was taking us 6 days to pick up your vehicle, right? After you called us, that number's come down under 2 days now, and it'll soon come under a day, right? And it's come there not just by hiring more people; it's come there by us rethinking the KRAs, the metrics on that. What we're prioritizing, by fixing our operations, by fixing our pickup slots, by rethinking all these tiny little pieces to make sure that at scale we can keep delivering a good experience, even via our dealer partners, right? Our charging infrastructure, we've really struggled with it in the past. At one point, with uptimes averaging about 45-50%, right? All we could have done is just go on and replace every single hardware that didn't work. But we chose to, root cause the problem really, really deeply and understand what exactly was not working. Bake that in as a problem for the next generation hardware. Bring the hardware live. That hardware also struggled. Went back and figured out the software hardware struggled. Went back and figured out the connectivity issues that struggled. We patched all of those pieces very painfully over almost 6 or 9 months. We finally are starting to see 90% uptimes. Right? And this number will 100% hit 99% the next year. Right? It takes a lot of effort, but that's how we want to deliver long-term sustaining CX. You buy a vehicle it's not a single-use vehicle. You buy a vehicle because you're going to be using it for the next 5, 6, 7 years. We don't want to do something that fixes it for now, but once we are large enough, once we have enough cash, once the company is public, screw you. We have no answers how to now run things, right? We want to make sure that by the time we get there, we are, if anything, delivering even better experience. So that's what it has to be.
Great. Let's end on a happy note.
Yeah, but where are we? What's this above and beyond, on track? What do you say?
On track.
On track?
We'll see how
We'll probably retreat. Yeah, sure. Fine. Thanks, Tarun. Thanks for your time, Tarun. I think we had a great conversation. Until the next review, probably then.
Yeah. Thank you guys.